Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson. Our man Michael Rockman is holding it down on the producing side of things. This episode brought to you by Rogue Apothecary, the rogueshop.com. Use the promo code Orange Bloods, which I'm sure is right on the screen around Anwar and I's faces right now, to take advantage of all the badass products they have. We're going to be talking about Quinn Ewers, the Super Bowl, mixing those things together, 5-star quarterback. So do us a favor, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, like the video, get notifications, and do all those things. Leave comments in the comments section. There are so many things that you can do if you haven't already done them. And if you get notifications and you're subscribed to the channel and you like the video before I even started talking, I guess just leave comments. That's like the only thing left for you to do. Anwar. Super Bowl's over. The dead season has officially begun. We are done with football. I feel like taps should be playing in the background. We got no football for like the next 6 months. Give me your takeaways from last night's Super Bowl. Let me start here. Best Super Bowl halftime show ever? Like, that has been a thing that I've seen said by a lot of people over the course of the last 12 to 15 hours or so.
It was definitely entertaining, right? And enjoyable as far as a trip down memory lane. You've seen like rappers here and there, but you haven't seen like a full-fledged show that's just dedicated to like hip hop. So I liked it. I enjoyed it. You were correct as far as, whether it would be something controversial to come out of it. You called it. I was like, no, but you know what? I underestimate. I was right about Dre wouldn't do it, right? I was like, Dre and Snoop, they're really corporate. I forgot about Eminem. I forgot that he doesn't give a damn.
He really doesn't.
And so just when, it's probably like when they told him don't do it, he's like, oh, well, now I'm definitely going to do it.
Absolutely. It's like saying don't curse.
Correct.
Which, by the way, I'm pretty sure I heard Dr. Dre sneaking his shit in the middle of, the problem with all those songs is it'd just be real easy for you to forget that there's the radio version you're supposed to be singing on broadcast TV. And
it's kind of like when you watch like old movies on like regular TV and you're like, hey, shut up, mother sucker. You're like,
yes, exactly.
Like, so anyway.
I was surprised that America is so. First of all, this is how mainstream the Kaepernick kneel is. That when Eminem first kneeled, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I was just like, what is he doing? And then I was like, oh, it's the Kaepernick. Like, it took a second for me. Like, a lot of people co-opted the kneel to the point that when Eminem did it, I just didn't put 2 and 2 together at first. And I'm the one that predicted that there would be some sort of protest. Didn't even sink in. I guess that's good for the NFL that we've gone far enough. Colin Kaepernick now is enough in the backdrop that Eminem did the kneel, and it was, I didn't see people freaking out about it, which was surprising.
Yeah, but so all it means is that Eminem won't be at the Super Bowl halftime show anytime soon, and I don't think Eminem cares. So
is 50 fat, or is he just swole?
He's swole. He's still for his age, he's still pretty small. Now, is he as defined from a muscle standpoint as he once was? Probably not. None of us are at this age. So I just think he's just small. You know
what he looked like to me? He looked like just a dude that had come out who's been doing upper body because that's all he can do in lifting weights. Like if you'd have told me Fitty just did, a stint somewhere for something, I'd have been like, yeah, he's got that upper. He has not missed upper body workouts. He hits chest every day. But people were like calling him, somebody on Orange Blood said he needs to go about 250 now. And I was like, oh, come on, man. He wasn't that bad.
He's just small. He's small. He he didn't have a dad bod. Like, he didn't have the gut.
Yeah.
You go to the gym and it's the guy who's got this and this. And
Yeah.
then he still has this here. And so he's just like this. Like, it wasn't like that.
I agree. I thought people were a little hard on Fitty, who, by the way, I have no idea why he needed to be in that halftime show.
I don't know what he had to do with LA.
I mean, the Eminem connection with Dre and Snoop, like, that's obvious. That's obvious. And you bring out Mary J. Blige and you have K-Dot show. All of that made sense. And Fitty showing up and doing like in the club. Just, I didn't completely get it, but the show went on. They segued in and out of it. It gave us some memes. I was completely okay with it. Let's just talk about the game for a second, and then I'll drag you into the Quinn Ewers conversation that I was inspired by and thinking about the recap of the Super Bowl and everything that had it, and specifically Matt Stafford. Anwar, Matt Stafford wakes up today with a completely changed legacy.
Yes. 100%.
People are talking about today whether or not he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, and it's hard for me to go that far because I can't pretend that I've ever talked about Matthew Stafford in that kind of vein before. It speaks to the weight of the Super Bowl, and even more so than I think the World Series in baseball or the NBA Finals in basketball. If you do something in the Super Bowl, it is the kind of thing that legitimately changes your life forever. And I felt like we watched that in real time last night by Matt Stafford, who, by the way, to his credit, balled out in the fourth quarter. You know, I kept waiting for that NFC Championship game throw where maybe it gets intercepted, maybe it doesn't. But Stafford's going to put one in an area where he's risking the game, and it never happened. I thought Matt Stafford played one of the more controlled games I've ever seen him have. And as I think back over the 60 minutes, there wasn't a whole lot that I would nitpick about it, especially when you consider he lost OBJ in the middle of the game. It felt like their skill position guys were dropping like flies. Top two tight ends are out. Robert Woods out from earlier in the season. In the end, it just ended up being him and Cooper Kupp. And it says a lot about his ability to throw the ball and Cooper Kupp's ability to get open and catch the ball and then do things with it afterwards. That ended up being enough for them to beat Cincinnati. And both of those dudes wake up today, just their lives are different, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, I mean, Ketch, when you think about it, you think about like what we'll say about Phillip Rivers, right? I mean, we'll talk about the stats, but do we think of him Hall of Fame, like first ballot or anything like that? Like, probably not so much because he doesn't have the ring. Matt Ryan, he'll have a ton of stats, but without that ring, and they were close. There's 28-3. They were close. Without the ring, you just go, he had a good career. That Stafford was on that same trajectory. Lots of great stats. But it was somewhat meaningless at times because it didn't have the rings. It didn't really have a lot of playoff wins. And then when you get that, now all of a sudden you're just viewed differently. Like you're in the club. Like you were in the club. I mean, what did it do for Eli? Being able to do that. Now all of a sudden Eli's legacy totally changed. How you perceive him is totally changed because you can say, well, he's got, multiple rings. So that's what it does for Matthews. And again, it's interesting. He's a guy, I was in Detroit. I covered, Stafford. I was in the NFL when he got drafted. I was in Tampa. Catch when he got drafted. And Josh Freeman got drafted by Tampa. Stafford got taken first. Sanchez was, I think, top 10 or somewhere in there. Freeman was down in the 20s. And so I remember when he came out, remember that class and then everyone trying to debate like who was going to be the best of that class, and then getting to Detroit and covering him and never being overwhelmingly impressed, knowing he was a good quarterback, but never thinking, okay, that what I'm seeing could be greatness. Never felt that way. And now,
and this wasn't like a historical Super Bowl We're going to forget it. We'll remember the halftime show more than we remember the game, I think, when it's all said and done. Because I think this Rams team will be a little bit of a flash in the pan. They aren't built for the long term. And they got dudes retiring literally as the game ends. You know, and one of those might be Aaron Donald, who we'll get to in a second. It amazes me how that 60 minutes of football can reframe. We talked about in the club with Fitty, right? If Matt Stafford's going to the club now, he gets in the VIP. And before, he was waiting in line, watching other dudes at his position walk right on by. And now he's in the club. And, you know, it does change his career. And, you know, it's interesting. I have followed Matt Stafford for almost 20 years. It's not quite that long, but he was a 5-star quarterback in the 2006 class, which means we started paying attention to him 2004-ish. It's been almost 20 years. And in high school, he was a great talent, but I don't think Highland Park won like a state championship or anything when he was there. He went to Georgia and had a pretty non-spectacular career. He goes to Detroit, and there are Pro Bowls, and, you know, there have been moments, the connections with Calvin Johnson. Like, he had a story, but I've never thought of him as like the big winner. And here we are today, and now it's the first thing on his tombstone. Here lies Matt Stafford. He won a Super Bowl, and, you know, there's a part of me that thinks, what the hell would today have looked like had they lost? It would have been put Joe Burrow on a mountaintop and talk about where his career is going, kind of like we did with Mahomes a couple of years ago when he won his first. And boy, there's a part of me that feels like we'd be piling on Matt Stafford. And yet here he is, and he's suddenly like a success story in a way that you can tell your grandchildren about. Remember how he fought through and, you know, survived adversity and being in Detroit. It's all kind of wild. Like, I'm having to reprogram my brain against the 20 years of narration about Matt Stafford as a player that has gone year by year by year. It feels like a brick put into the wall as to what we will remember Matt Stafford for. Now it's all blown up. He's a champion.
Ketch, I'm kind of curious now that he has that title and everything. When you start thinking, I'm kind of curious of your perspective. When you start now thinking of some of the great quarterbacks that's coming out of the state of Texas that played in the NFL, where would you now put Stafford on that list?
Well,
and look, Foles has a Super Bowl ring, so right. So, but he had a hell of a postseason as well. I'm kind of curious though, where would he be in top 5? I mean, as far as your list is concerned, like as far as NFL players, Drew Brees on that list as well.
I mean, as far as NFL players, you would have to say so because, you know, even if you took a guy like Andrew Luck, I mean, that's an interesting side-by-side case now. Andrew Luck was a national top 70 player for Rivals. He wasn't viewed as a 5-star. Obviously, Rivals didn't rank him high enough. But he comes out in 2008, and Stafford comes out in 2006. And in the end, I feel like even though we all believe that at his apex, Andrew Luck was better than Matt Stafford, did Matt Stafford just pass him up by he now has the better career? Yeah. And he played in Detroit for every year but this one.
But it's crazy. Like, if you look up his stats, I mean, his stats are through the roof when you start looking at what his stats
quarterback for a long time.
I mean, if I'm correct, I got to go back. He had like, what, a 5,000-yard season, if I'm correct, in year 3. He had a 5,000-yard season, 5,038. Yes, that was one of my, I was in Detroit for that. So 5,000 yards, 41 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, Catch. I mean, he right now, Catch, sitting here, and I don't know if this thing is how much has been updated. He has nearly 50,000 passing yards, Catch, in his career. 50,000 passing yards, 323 touchdowns, 161 interceptions.
You know what? His quarterback rating still sucks. You know, because what I just looked up the NFL all-time quarterback, like passer rating leaders.
Yeah.
And that's a leaderboard that the older quarterbacks get screwed on. You know, like Aaron Rodgers has 8 points between him and Steve Young for first and second place. And Mahomes would be up there if he's qualified enough. And I typed in Matthew Stafford's name thinking he'll be in that top 10, right? A lot of really good regular season quarterback play, but nothing else. He's 29th all time in quarterback rating with an 82.79, which is literally 22 plus points behind Aaron Rodgers. It's below Mark Brunell. It's below Jay Cutler. It's below Mark Bolger, David Gerard, Trent Green, Carson Palmer. Like his regular season exploits have actually been just okay. Do you know who he sits above by 0.08 in all-time quarterback rating?
Who?
Eli Manning. And in the end, one of those guys getting in might be the thing that helps the other guy get in. And having seen this year's Hall of Fame class, when I don't know that Sam Mills he might have been the fourth best linebacker on the Saints at one point. He's in the Hall of Fame. And look, I love Sam Mills. Watched him play in the USFL with the Philadelphia and Baltimore Stars like I was a fan, right? He's not a better player than Zach Thomas, but the NFL seems to be letting players who are in the Hall of Very Good get into the Hall of Fame eventually. I'm just stunned that some of the guys that got in this year got in ahead of DeMarcus Ware and Andre Johnson.
Devin Hester, Andre Johnson, Jared Allen. I mean,
and those guys will all get in, but the NFL, like, baseball's hardcore. It's like if you don't get 75% of the vote, and like you can tell pretty early on, oh, this dude never has a chance. Like he's in the NFL, it's never, and you know better than anybody. You've been in these rooms. It's never cut and dry how that process exactly works. Somebody stands up, they speak about a guy. It can go for 5 minutes, it can go for 10 minutes, and there's like a discussion about a player. I don't know. Like we're at a point now. My gut tells me if some of these dudes that made it into this year's Hall of Fame are in, maybe Stafford and Eli do get in. They won't get in like in the first 5 years.
You know, but I think Eli might be first ballot, Catch.
There's no way Eli gets in first ballot.
I'll be
lunch bet.
Lunch bet.
Lunch bet. All right.
Dinner bet. I'll bet a steak.
Ooh,
I'll bet a steak that Eli will get on first ballot.
First ballot.
I
can't wait. I can't wait.
We got another 4 more years. He just retired last year.
Oh yeah, no, we gotta wait a while.
Yeah, you got 4 more years.
One of us will be eating well in 2025 or 2026. Well, look, while we're talking about quarterbacks, specifically Matt Stafford, let me go into, God, and maybe this isn't an overreaction. Maybe this is just a reaction.
Okay.
But considering he's never thrown a pass in college yet, this might be, my overreaction is not that Quinn Ewers will make it into the NFL. Because I looked it up. I was updating some historical numbers this week. And in the history of Rivals.com, nearly a 20-year cycle of players, 83% of all 5-star quarterbacks from the state of Texas were drafted in the NFL. So 83%, that's a huge number. I mean, So it's not an overreaction for me to then say, well, Quinn Ewers is going to be drafted by an NFL team. I watched that game last night without ever having seen him throw a pass in college yet. His resume and his profile tells me Quinn Ewers will be starting for an NFL team at some point in his career. And Stafford is the guy that he gets compared to the most.
Yeah.
All those tools. And the question is, can he be a great player? And I watched the Super Bowl last night and said, well, take the Super Bowl away for a second. Without ever seeing Quinn Ewers play, can I imagine that he could have a Matt Stafford type career? And the answer is yes. Yes, he'll be in the NFL. He's going to play. He'll be a starting quarterback. What does it mean and to what levels will he reach? And it always kind of felt like Matt Stafford was, I don't know, like a weird compliment, like a passive aggressive. It's a compliment, but not really. And now it changed last night. Last night, I am thinking about Matt Stafford, and now we're talking about the Hall of Fame because of a Super Bowl win. And it will be interesting to follow Quinn Ewers' career because his profile screams play in the NFL and start for an NFL team. And then you and I both know, and you more so than me because you've covered NFL beats before. You've sat face to face with guys like Calvin Johnson, and they've never had that moment.
Correct.
And last night I watched that game thinking a little bit about Quinn Ewers and whether or not in 7 years, is he Joe Burrow? And because if he is, Steve Sarkisian very likely could still be the head coach at Texas at that point. And it's so funny how the conversations about Quinn and Arch is another one. You watched that game last night and Arch Manning's profiles, just like Quinn Ewers, says he's definitely going to play in the NFL. He'll likely start for an NFL team. How close to a Matt Stafford-like career or above that or below that do either of those guys get? Fine margins sometimes determine just exactly how we view guys. But as we get ready to go into this season, like that's who Quinn Ewers has a chance to be.